Welcome to the Protector Culture Podcast with Jimmy Graham. Jimmy is a veteran U.S. Navy SEAL, a former protective officer for the CIA Global Response Staff, founder and CEO of the Able Shepherd Program, a husband and father of 4, and a personal friend of mine. Now here's Jimmy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Protector Culture Podcast with Jimmy Graham. I'm your host, Jimmy Graham, joined today by BK once again on this side of the camera.
Back in the house.
Able Shepherd 051. Awesome to have you. I think maybe you should get comfortable over here. We should talk more. This is good. Usually he's hiding behind the cameras and giving me signals and doing the time thing and starting and stopping cameras.
Speaking of which.
Doing setup. He's going to start a timer for us. So BK, on this one, I want to talk about, this kind of rocked me. I just did recently, I just flew to Florida. Got back. It's hard for me to read or listen and focus on books. And one rocked me. You've got a son. I've got a son. We were talking about, what we're talking about is a book called The Boy Crisis. It talks about this, this emasculation of males today. And I think it hit me a little bit hard. I've known about this. I know that there is this strategy to take things away from young men, and having a little boy that I'm shaping into a man, and that will continue despite what people say I should tell my son. I know, I believe there's a certain way that I'm going to raise him.
Yep.
And it rocked me. It rocked me in a different way. So I want to just throw out some points from this book, and I'll recommend it and read some points off, cite it so you know who wrote it. Actually, let's go ahead and do that so I don't forget. It's called The Boy Crisis, Why Our Boys Are Struggling and What We Can Do About It. And it's by Warren Farrell and John Gray, both with PhDs evidently. So dual authorship or whatever you want to call it. Some stuff I hadn't heard about, some stuff I knew about, and I just want to jump right in and talk about it and just jump in where you see fit, having been ahead of me in raising a boy into a young man. One of the things that really stands out was they were talking about, this is well within the book, and I'm not going to do as good a job easing into it. I'm just going to jump right into it. It really struck me that they talked about just take a generation like our grandparents' generation. Yep. The men and women had a purpose. The purpose was, for the men, was to risk their life in war and to raise money. And to raise a family, it takes money, and they were raising money.
Provide for a family.
Right. And the woman's purpose was to risk her life in childbirth and raise children. You fast forward to when, the war's won, there's peace again, and there's no need for this dangerous individual to have to risk their life, right? So you lose kind of that purpose. Then there's the dual breadwinner thing, so you kind of lose that purpose, meaning that men are stuck saying, what's my purpose, which is typically fine when there's a father to say, let's find you a new purpose. But now we've got a fatherless generation. So we've got so many people where a father's not in the home, and they call it a purpose void. There's a purpose void saying, what is this purpose? Because now it's like, in many homes, and this can be good and bad and however you want to cut it. But now it's like, and he kind of jokingly said, now it's where we both make money. There's no danger, and we both go check out the burglar. You know what I mean? So it's like, where there used to be a well-defined purpose, now there's not, and there's no attempt to fix it because there's not a man in the house. So, and at the attempt of offending single mothers or anything like that, I really think this needs attention. He ties that in, and just that purpose void. I don't think I can argue that, meaning that I see too many people that don't know their purpose. They're floating around. There's a world telling them that what you believed, and we talked about this a little before we went on, is wrong. And to the point where he starts off the book talking about a friend saying, do you want a boy or a girl? He thought about it for a while and says, I think a girl. Like, he didn't want a boy because he sees the future for boys and young men in this nation. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's a slippery slope hearing this, because I don't want to fall into roles or stereotype or predefined whatever, but I can't help but thinking, okay, 3-4 generations ago, or 300-400 years ago, or 3,000-4,000 years ago, there were certain things that men in general were very good at least in the books I read: hunting, gathering, right? They carried the spear, they hunted the animal, they captured the meat, and maybe the wives, the women, played a more protective role around the camp or the house. As you said, raising the children, preparing the meals, whatever it may be. But I do think there's a certain amount of, what do I want to say, like a brute force that young men, young boys need to assert. And I saw that in my childhood with, say, football or hockey or lacrosse, where you're bumping heads, wrestling. Like there's an energy that men need to express that I think is being lost. And one example I have of that, when Alex was growing up, I remember it was probably pre-kindergarten, kindergarten days, 5 years old. Took him out, sat down by the creek, said, grab a stick, here's a knife. And his mom was floored. What are you doing giving a 5-year-old a knife? Well, I'd rather he know how to properly handle it, how to be safe with it, sharpen the stick going away from you, never towards you. It was a folding pocket knife. Here's how you close it and not chop up your fingers. Not because it was dangerous or living on the edge, but the world I grew up in, boys were not dangerous, but close to getting hurt. So sharpening a stick or shooting a BB gun or wrestling and playing sports, there was an edge, there was an outlet, there was a place for all of this young energy to be placed. And I think as we grew up, some of the boys went off, played college sports, some went off into the military, some went off, had very successful careers. And one thing I'm seeing recently that troubles me, and I can say the younger generation now because there's a couple behind me, is some of these younger men coming up through the ranks appear to be a little lost. And I see that in a business setting, in a job interview. When I came out of college, it was go to work, get a paycheck every other Friday, pay your bills, save a little money, buy a house. Like it was fairly well defined. And the younger people coming up now, there's not maybe the vision, there's not so much the drive. The passion for creating something and doing something is not as strong. And the way I interpret that sitting across the desk is they're a little bit lost. They don't have the predefined purpose, maybe, or they don't know what they want to be when they grow up. And it bothers me that there isn't that drive to, you know what, I want to go to work for 25 years and get the gold watch and retire. You don't hear kids say that anymore.
Yeah.
I want to go to work to pay for my kayak, and if they're upset I want to take off Fridays, then I'll just quit and get another job. I'm like, say what? Just not the way I was raised. So.
It's funny because I was kind of that kid. I was like a little late. Like I was kind of bouncing around and lost, and I would get a job to get a paycheck, and then I was out of there.
Yeah.
Let's go hang out with my buddies, that kind of thing. Yeah. So, we could say that for many generations. I think that it troubles me that we're entering as a society this oh man, I would butcher it if I tried it right now. Talking about these cycles that we go through, where it says and I'll take a stab at it, where it says, hard men make good times. Good times make soft men make, hard times. Hard times, is that right? And then, hard times make hard men. So it's just a cycle. It means it's going to get to a level of luxury, and then it's going to fall off because there's got to be a hard reset. There's got to be something that stings bad enough to wake us up, I guess. And one of the points that I'm taking away from the book, he says, the more survival is at stake, the more boys are valued. The more luxury is enjoyed, the more girls are valued by society. A big push to adopt a young baby girl. You know what I mean? Things like that. Probably not a boy because he's going to grow up to be a man. You know what I mean? He's going to grow up to be rough and all that stuff. It's amazing how this the use of a term by certain people with an agenda of toxic masculinity, like this you being of something that's dangerous, you being of something that's uncontrollable, so we won't allow you to be masculine. Your point about the pocket knife, when I put a pocket knife in Christian's pocket, he just turned 7 this weekend. So he's on top of the world. He's a big boy.
Happy birthday.
Oh, right? I know, right? He's like he's big stuff. I'm like, man, you look taller. He's like, well, I'm 7 now. Oh my God. Okay, roger that. But, I'll let him have a pocket knife, and he knows to use that when I'm sitting there with him and all that. But he'll just, if we're going outside, we're going to go do something outdoors or, go set up a campsite or something like that. He's like, can I take my knife? I'm like, yeah, he grabs it, slips in his pocket. Where my knife? Right there in the pocket. He clips it on, and then he stands a couple inches taller. You know what I mean? It's a big deal when I leave the house and I say, hey, take care of our ladies, and I think it's equally amazing how my oldest daughter, both my daughters are amazing. They're just good sisters. Rachel says Christian is going to make an amazing husband. You know what I mean? Because he's just loved on by these girls, and he understands. And they equally take care of him, meaning Rebecca's 12 years old. She's pretty much in charge. But when I leave and I go, you're the man of the house. Do you understand? Like, I got to go away for a couple of days. I'm going to Florida. I'm coming back. You're the man of the house. I need to take care of these girls. He's like, you understand? Yes, sir. They're looking at me like, it's a big deal, And I look at Becca, and she gives me a little wink, like, I got this, because she's going to support him being a little man. You know what I mean? Yeah. She's going to give him this little, this dignity, of standing up and something. The other day she said something. She looked outside. I knocked on the door purposely kind of loud because I didn't want to open the garage or something like that. I was like, wham, 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 on the front door, because there's a little drill they say, and just whatever to keep the house safe and all that stuff. And he went to go look around the window, and and she would say something like, hey, get over here. Like, don't go by the window. Get over here so let's find out who this is. Or she'll tell him to hey, grab a stick or something. Yeah. It's like, he's like this tall, you know what I mean? So 7 years old, but she was like, hey, grab something just in case, grab a golf club. And it just empowers him, and he's like, hey man, whatever. And I believe he probably would, he'd give fight his little 7-year-old heart out to protect these ladies. And I don't want to take that out of him. I think it was John Eldridge's book, Wild at Heart. Highly recommend it. Where he talked about, like you would break a horse, like the old school mentality of training horses, you break their spirit, then make them what you want to be. He's like, you don't break a boy's spirit. You keep that intact, because you may depend on that boy to save your life someday. Yep. So we've got generations ahead of us that have called on their young men to save their nation. And they did. You know what I mean? So when they talk about that, it may be in an armed capacity for the armed forces. It may be in a personal situation in your front yard. You just don't get to pick. But historically, that's what's happened is young men got called on to ask unthinkable things, and they answered the call. And I believe to a certain extent there are those young men. There's the Alex Karches. There's the the Max's son that just recently joined the Army. There are plenty out there, and if we ask them to save this nation, they would.
Absolutely.
But what scares me is that the world is kicked it into turbo drive to try to convince them that that's a lie. That everything that we just mentioned, that's actually a dangerous thing of your father, and you're of this dangerous potential, and you should avoid it.
Yeah, I feel like perhaps they're being encouraged to be soft.
Yeah. To
lose their edge. And I don't know, call me old-fashioned, but you got to know how to use a knife. You got to know how to make fire. One that blew my mind, young man didn't know how to change a flat tire. It's five lug nuts and a jack. I mean, you probably should have been doing that when you were 9 or 10.
That's still a cherished memory of mine because you mentioned that. The star pattern.
Yeah.
You know the star pattern when you tighten it? I still remember, sitting in the driveway and my dad explaining how it equally hugs the tire up, the wheel.
Snugs it up
to the hub. I'm like, and that's a crisp memory of mine, sitting there in the dirty gravel, with a 4-way, and you're talking about just tighten those things up. And he's like, well, we want to do it this way. That way it just sucks it up evenly and all that kind of stuff, So that's a big deal. I remember back when you could work on cars, meaning set with your feet like a grown man in the engine bay in an old Bronco. And I remember
still
that.
See the asphalt.
And still see the ground. You know what I mean? It's not a bunch of plastic. You're like, oh, that's that. Let's pull that off, get a new one, and this thing runs again. So I know it's more complicated than that. But those are cherished memories that I think that especially these newer cars, it's like, man, take this thing in, get a diagnostic, and then have some, whatever, send it off to somebody else. So I don't know. That's the part that troubles me. And you'd mentioned, excuse me, before we came on about the, opening a door.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? What do you do?
Well, maybe it's my standard disclaimer of being old school, but I was taught and I was raised. I think from an area of love and respect that as a young man showing a sign of respect I think you call it double step. You speed it up a little bit. You get out in front of the crowd. You open the door, whether it's for your mom or for my little sister or for my grandma. And even in some cases, you know, I obviously looked up to my dad quite a bit. Hey, Air Force Colonel, I better get out there and open that door for him, as a show of respect. Yeah. And I think whatever's happened recently, I don't see that as much. Especially, it's a relatively fresh memory, but kind of those high school boys, lots of energy, nowhere to put it, 15, 16 years old, 8 of them kind of all touching shoulders when they walk, no interpersonal space. But they'll all race for the door to be the alpha male through the door. And I'm like, guys, you're missing the point of the story, Yeah. Get up there, hold the door open for your buddy, for your friend, for maybe your girlfriend who might be with you. I think there's an awful lot to that, and it's such a simple gesture.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a sign of strength or anything other than respect. I'm going to help you out here. Yeah. I happened to be flying back from Phoenix today, and a lady was struggling with her luggage on one of those, shopping carts where you put all your bags on.
Yeah.
COVID, rubber gloves, whatever it may be. I'm going to grab your luggage. I'm going to stack it properly. I'm going to help you get in the elevator. Even push the button. But once we get down on the first floor, well, kind of on your own, because I've got my wife with me.
Yeah.
That's my primary responsibility. So, you can lend a helping hand. You can be what was called a gentleman at one point. And I don't think that should ever be bred or trained out of any young man.
Yeah, agreed. That I think, to the opening the door thing, even watching language, stuff like that, there used to be in day and time, and you can use the excuses of, well, it's police, it's fire, it's military, it's those harder jobs where they need the dark humor to kind of get by. I absolutely disagree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was a time and a place. I'm sorry. There was a time when you didn't drop an F-bomb in front of a lady. You didn't do the like all this, especially an F-bomb, but curse. There's just a war on decency right now, and some of this stuff is absolutely vile when you watch some of these, and it's like, oh, I can rip it up with the best of them. No, because that's not the best of them. That's a bunch of guys that are trying to figure out the kind of guy they're going to be, and we see them every day.
All day.
And this could be 30 years old, it could be 60 years old, wandering around, wondering what kind of man they're going to be. So I think that we can influence people by living our lives and saying, no, open the door. Don't open the door for me. I've had a lot of that. I have people that can open my own door, stuff like that. And I don't think they realize that I'm doing it half for you. It's a courtesy thing. It's just me not being rude, but I've got to remain me. I must do this. I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if I'm going to open this door to convenience, I think I'd open the door, like you said, for men too. Like some guys would, all right, hold the door. Guy, I said, I'll get it, brother. I already got it. Come on in, sir. Like that kind of thing. Yeah. It's just a thing to just say, hey, it's a courtesy thing. Appreciate you. Whatever. Thank you for holding that. I didn't have to open it, whatever. I'll grab the next one for you, that kind of thing. Again, flying from Florida, this couple gets on. I'm sorry. It's crammed in there, which is funny to me because we just talked about this.
But make sure you have
the
your mask
schools
on.
are shut down, right? Because the teacher might get sick, and I'm basically sitting in your lap right now, and you're breathing in my ear. So like all of this stuff, it's funny to me. But I got an aisle seat. I get in there. I'm sitting there for a while, Southwest. So I'm sitting, you get there early or whatever. And I like getting on early, firing up an audiobook or something like that. And I see this just flustered, this woman. She's got her family with her. She got a little boy with her, right? Yep. And now it's full. So now they're looking, and you sit over there, and I'll sit over here. And the guy's like, the flight attendant male was like, I'm sorry, there's no more together, all that stuff. And I see what's going on, and there's a seat next to me. And I go, ma'am, do you want to sit together? And I stand up, and she's like, where are you going to sit? And I'm like, I don't know if she understood. I'm like, this allows you to sit next to your son. I'll sit next, and nobody's going to say this, but there's not much space between those individuals just because of their build. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah. I'll take that seat, and I'm not a small guy, but it's like, I'll manage to fit in there. You know what I mean?
It's only 4.5 hours back to Florida.
It's only 4.5 hours, right? I'm going to lock into my, audiobook or whatever and just be quiet anyways. And just, try to play the shoulder game and try to get at least half the armrest or whatever. Fine. I'm in that. You can sit here with your son, Yeah, right. And even before that, she was a little bitty. Can I help you with the bag? Cause I want to ask, cause otherwise I just grab it, but it's COVID. So I'm like, somebody freaks somebody out. I'm like, can I help you? Yeah. Can you please set that there. And she's got this bag that it's like, I don't know if she had gold bullion in this thing or whatever. It's this big, but it weighs like 70 pounds. So
Cannonballs.
Right. So I chunked this thing in there, let her somebody. But it's the common courtesy thing that I think there's this war on decency of one, he talks about that equality. You say equality when it works for you, but women don't register for a draft to get called into war.
Yep.
You're like, how far are we taking this? And I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying that there's equality, and then there's equality. Cool. Next point. Being male is the number one factor for early death.
Wow, I sure hope not.
True story. He talks about a lot of things, meaning like more likely to take a dangerous job that puts you out in the street in the middle of the night, a police officer, whatever, to pay for to raise money to support a family. There's many factors in that, but there are a lot of, for example, 4-to-1 men to women, and this is harsh. So suicides now take more lives than war, murder, and natural disaster combined. So when you're talking about men right now in this state of being in conflict, and I believe this was written pre-COVID. So now we're talking about COVID added to all of this stuff.
It's exaggerating it,
yeah. And that thing about providing for your family and now you can't, and all these other stresses combined on the world telling you that you don't have a purpose and you're borderline. You're just an abusive, man, whatever, a violent individual. And it's a worldwide thing. So it's not just locally. One of the things that stood out to me was he says we're talking worldwide. More men have died in the UK by suicide in the past year than by all British soldiers fighting in all British wars since 1945.
I can't get my head around that. And I think where my thoughts went was soldiers coming back from war, transitioning from a military life into a civilian life. Some of them, there's a gap where that purpose isn't defined. They're not the routine. I will wake up at 5 o'clock, chow hall at 6, desk at 8, PT, whatever. The routine isn't there. The purpose isn't there. And we're back to that point of they're lost.
Yeah.
So now, on the civilian side, these suicides are going up. COVID is exacerbating it. And now it doesn't surprise me. If you don't know what your role is, for lack of a better word, you don't have some guiding principles to fall back upon, and you don't know what the future holds, there's a lot of unknowns that is very unsettling.
Yeah, so this one rocked me. I'm going to throw this one at you.
Uh-oh.
Just in the
Brace for
blind.
impact.
Brace, put your mouthpiece in. Let me try to do what he did, and then I'll throw it out there. When you think about your dad in his younger days, what was the glint in his eye? He would tell you something, and it made him come alive. Maybe it was a sport. Maybe it was flying a plane. Maybe it was riding a motorcycle. I don't know. For my dad, I get maybe camping, and he was a softball guy, things like that. What was the thing that when he started talking, he started getting excited and talking faster and rubbing his hands together and doing that kind of thing?
It was interesting, and I hope I can present it properly, but primarily I grew up on a baseball field.
Yeah.
And it was always about hustle. Baseball is a very slow sport, mind-numbing, some will say. But when you grab that mitt and you're heading out to the field, double step, bust your ass a little bit, get out there, get the blood going, get the energy going. You hit 3 balls out of 10 and you're in the Hall of Fame. So failure is a pretty huge piece of baseball. So you squibbling off the end of the bat. You run as hard as you can, like the World Series is on the line, getting to first base. Because you know what? 1 time out of 100, you might be safe. And that might change the output of the game. But so that was certainly the sparkle in his eye, was any time he talked about the hustle and the determination and outworking the guy next to you. That's what turned on his light switch.
Mm-hmm. I'd say for my dad, outdoors, camping, I still don't know how he did it, meaning that he always worked labor jobs, like work, sweat work, calluses, that kind of thing. but yet every summer we went somewhere. We did a summer vacation somewhere. Maybe it was Lake of the Ozarks. Maybe it was driving to the Grand Canyon. Maybe it was seeing Mount Rushmore. Maybe it was whatever. And I still, for the life of me, don't understand how there were 5 kids. There wasn't money rolling in. And then we still did, like my grandparents had a place. And when I say cabin, then you picture like the little Lincoln log cabin next to the thing. It was a trailer, in a cove. Yeah. And, and it to us, it was paradise. Yeah. You know what I mean? But we always managed to go and do things together as a family, and he made time to do that. So that was amazing. So here's the gut punch, is that he had a lady on, and he was talking about the glint in your dad's eye. I mean, there was something that sparked when they say, find your passion and go do this thing. And this lady was talking about it, and she was saying that, like my dad, the glint in his eye was he had a plane and he would fly. And he always talked about, mom and him's first date and their first kiss, and he had proposed, and his passion was flying. He goes, but he never took me. And she resented it for years, and all this stuff. And through counseling, this person that they're talking to says, did you ever ask him? Like, go talk to him. Go see what was going on there. He gets like watery-eyed and says that was his passion. But when they got married, mom said, this is a dangerous thing, so I don't think that both parents should be up again. All right. And I'm not comfortable having the kids here because I just heard about a plane crash. And she quickly realized that her misunderstanding of an entire life is that he traded the glint in his eye for her.
Yeah.
This is like, he didn't not take you because he didn't like you. He did not take you because you weren't worthy.
One of the biggest
of
sacrifices he could make.
So, and then he goes on to point out many times when he says, there was a passion thing that was traded in for you. It's like your dad, that thing, he could have been a camper. He could have helped people guide whatever. He could have done all this stuff. But instead, he went with the paycheck that would make sure that you could pursue your glint.
And that brings back a very good memory. Dad was a Air Force officer for most of my childhood. And for those of you that don't know, the military is not the highest paying job in the country. And I never knew that.
Yeah.
We had everything we ever needed. And I was fortunate when we moved to Denver, went to a pretty affluent high school. I mean, the joke is the kids drive BMWs and Porsches and Mercedes, and it's not a joke.
Yeah.
And I remember one day, I'm some cocky 16-year-old. I'm like, Dad, why aren't you a CEO of some company? And he just said, son, there's bigger things in life, and I'd rather have the flexibility in my work schedule so I have time for you and your sister, to coach baseball, to take you up skiing, to experience life with you, versus, these CEOs, you may not know it, they work 14, 16 hours a day, they're traveling all over the world. They have no quality time with their family. And I never in life have I appreciated it more. Alex shipped out 3-4 months ago. That time with your children from, let's just say 0 to 20, blink of an eye. I cannot believe how fast it went. If somebody told me it went that fast, I'd be like, oh, come on, old man, you're kidding me. But yeah, for you, Rebecca's going to be driving in 2 years.
La, la,
Brace
la,
for
la.
impact.
I know. It's insane. And I just take a look at it. So we just did a little, they were doing this sort of like an excuse for a daddy-daughter ball with the COVID and all that stuff. That used to be a big deal for us, especially with with my 2 older girls. That they get dressed up and it was this ball experience, all that stuff. So buddy says, hey man, you want to do dinner? Like, let's take our daughters out. Let's just go to dinner and a movie. So we do, and we go in there, and they're wearing dresses. But man, every year they walk down, like literally like the last time I can remember doing this, they went and grabbed like Frozen dresses out of the last time I took them to dinner, like on that kind of like dad wears a suit, you wear a dress. And I think mom was out of town, and I said, let's go do this. They come and get costumes, like Disney store costumes from Frozen, and that like with the
to look like a princess.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, like I didn't mean. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. So we go to the restaurants at the Union down in Castle Rock. We go in there, and it's just funny, and it's like, oh, whatever. Yeah, here we go. And we go there, and the waitress is amazing. She's like, oh, you're so beautiful, and they sit tall in their ceiling. We blink. This time I go out, they walk downstairs, and they got the little walk down the stairs, and my buddy went and picked up these corsages for all of them. It's a corsage boutonniere. What's it called?
Yeah, the flower.
This is the wrist one for the girl. Whatever.
Okay, yeah.
Anyways, and their mom has them when they come down and put them on everything. they're young ladies now.
Oh, yeah.
What just happened? You know what I mean? And thanks a lot, Vince. So my buddy Vince talks about the tape measure thing. He pulls a tape measure and he puts it out there and says, okay, typical man lives whatever, here's 80 something, puts his fingers there and he goes, where you at again? And 47 and clip. You're like, dude, that's not funny. Now you're like, oh my gosh. But there's things I was going to do. I got whatever. And then he goes a step further and he goes, okay, we'll call 18 right here is the year that Becca gets to decide what she does from now on. How old is she again? And he puts his fingers here. You see all this measuring tape over here and there's not much left. You know what I mean? So when you're looking at 5 little spaces there that you get to call the shots, something grabs you.
Yes,
You've been through this and you know this well. But and back to the book, he says careers are for now, children are forever. To be able to choose those careers. And I truly think that, and thank goodness for the amazing mentors and people in my life that have said exactly what we said. It goes by so fast. You blink your eyes and, all of this stuff, I take that to heart. One of the proudest things I believe I'll ever tell my kids, because I truly loved my jobs. And it's one thing to be, I think, a SEAL or, a protective officer, CIA, all this kind of stuff. It's one thing to leave when you're okay at it. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I was good at it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It was a natural fit for me. I like taking care of people. But one of the proudest things I'll ever say to them is they're like, man, that was amazing. And they know because they say it's a secret thing. And this is funny to me. Like, don't mention where you're working, blah, blah, blah. But the CIA, my paychecks would show up and say CIA on them. Like my returns for the taxes. And I'm like, what? Like, what are we doing here? It would say Central Intelligence Agency. I'm like, oh, so, whatever. But anyways, the kids have heard their mom talk and all that kind of stuff. And now they're seeing these little silly cartoons and all that stuff. So, the boy, we always call him the boy, Christian. He's like, he kind of whispers it, the CIA, when you were, like, it's just a funny little thing. But one of the proudest things I'll be able to tell them is when they say, like, why did you leave that? And I'll say, you.
Because of you.
Like, I really, truly was like, I'm not going to mess this up. Like, I want to do this right.
Yeah.
My dad was a great example. He just worked a lot for us. Like I said, it doesn't happen that way. You don't make a lot of money, so I know that he worked hard to pay for the house, to make sure we could pursue our dreams, and to make sure that we spent quality time together every single summer.
And I like that he created experiences.
That's right.
Because that family experience made memories.
Yeah.
That now last forever.
Yeah.
And you can't replace those.
Yeah.
A new toy or it's not the same.
Yeah. And the hands-on stuff, and I plan, to do more stuff like that with the kids, because they do like crafts. They do like busting out tools. They do like, like we worked on our own bikes. I'm not sure how I'm sitting here, but I remember having drills and hammers and like, when you would jump those big jumps and you'd strip out the deal. Mm-hmm. So obviously just go get a drill and bore a bolt through the middle, right? And I'm like, man, I was like 6. How did I have access to plug in, rip your arm off power tools? Hey, all worked out.
I always like the saying that typically wraps up a repair session like that. Like, yeah, that ought to work. That should work. What could go wrong?
From the shop teacher that's missing 4 fingers, right? You're like, okay, roger that. Well, cool, brother. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. I do want to finish on a high note, meaning that I truly believe, and I've had this conversation, 5 times in the past 5 days, is talking about the best way to invest in them, the future, whether it be our kids or young people or even, not young people around us, is to work on ourselves. Like literally the best thing I can do for Christian Graham is work on Jimmy Graham. Yeah. The best thing I can do for the girls is let them see a stronger me, and we're doing that every day. I mean, even as we sit here. How long did it take us standing right here to start this podcast? Class was over at what time?
Probably 2 hours.
Yeah. So we just started.
Yep.
We sit here at 10:16 right now. Class was over at
7:15.
7:15, yeah. So actually before that, it was over at, let's see. Yeah, that was over at 6:30. Like we ran, 7 o'clock was that was a shortened class of 5 to 7. Anyways, and attempted a couple times. How many times did Eric say he was going to leave?
It took Eric 48 minutes. 48 minutes to travel 4 square feet.
He shook hands, said, see you guys later. And then another topic came up and he just didn't want to leave. And that's an amazing thing. And I love that my kids get to see this, is this community that we've facilitated, that we've helped birth. It's addictive.
Yep.
It's amazing. It's the best thing I can do for those kids, is they get to see the men and women respectfully interacting. They get to see that This is the way this is an option. They
get to see adults behaving and leading by example.
Yeah, with a mature respect for each other and decency.
Yep.
Like, you're not going to hear that. You hear that kind of language, it'll be one time and you'll never see that guy again.
Yep.
That's just kind of the culture that we've built, and I love it. And so do they. They can't wait to come to work with me. They can't wait to go, like, there's a barbecue, there's a thing, there's a whatever, and they're ready to go. And they know, like, if we say something like, the other day I was like, Pete Ernbach, was it BK? They know people's first and last name because they just hear it all the time and they're surrounded by it. So anyways, that's a good deal. So I appreciate your contribution, and you're great with my kids. Every time you see them, they love being around you and the guys, and it is such a good deal, meaning that they are our future. And the more that we invest in them, the more that everybody's going to benefit. I do believe that we are changing this nation, at least our part of it right now. I think it's a grassroots effort to say, it's so broken up top as far as government, as far as politics and all that stuff. But representatives, meaning the word representative means you represent something. So if you've got a bunch of whatever, I'm going to get a name calling, but you got a bunch of, okay, let's go ahead and get a name calling. No, if you have a base of people that are not decent and respectful and mature and all that stuff, and you have a representative that's honest. But if you do have a base of people that represent the things we just talked about, and you actually choose a representative that is represents those people or reflects those peoples, that's how we fix that.
Yeah, and it's got to start at the house.
Yeah,
because 5-10 years from now, when Christian, Rebecca, Sarah are out in the world making their own way, they have such a strong foundation that has been laid down for them. The only way they can grow is up.
Yeah.
They are set, not only with you and Rachel, but the community, the Able Shepherd community. Guarantee there's 200 people that have their back out of the gates.
Yeah, yeah, and
anywhere they go.
We've got a friend that we both know, and I was talking to her, just bouncing something off, because I said something about, man, I was really called this John Eldridge type, calling, this book within me that may be pursued here in the near future. Talking about that, I said, what do you think about this? And I threw out a title, threw out a concept, threw out some stuff because of the, there's a conservative, I believe that she is kind of in alignment with most of our thinking, but she's the one that's probably the more so on the other side. You know what I mean? So I just like getting honest opinions from everybody, really. And I threw out this concept, and she has a young daughter. And she goes, absolutely agree with you. Wholeheartedly agree with you. You need to write that book, and the world needs to hear that. Because I have a young...
just hear Jimmy Graham is going to write a book?
I am. I'm actually in the process right now. And it won't be a sealed book, by the way. But I said that, like this calling of young men and redefining what that means. Because I had a kind of a bad example, not from my dad, but from society, I think. Just a lot of bad examples in the SEAL teams. This whiskey drinking, F-bomb dropping, just like all of this stuff. And I get it, and part of it's cool. But, the old ball and chain, the old ball and chain and the Rugrats and all, like kids in a family was a burden.
Yeah.
And then when I got there, I'm like, man, you must have really been doing it wrong. You know what I mean? So when I mentioned this concept to this lady, and she goes, please write that. Because right now I've got a young lady that I'm raising, and I want her to marry a man. Yeah. And I'm not sure where she's going to find one. And I'm not saying wrong, right, or indifferent. I'm just saying this is on her heart right now because she sees what's happening to young boys, and now they're choosing something else that's not what she signed up for when she was looking for a man. And now she's saying it's even worse now. So now what happens?
Yep.
That there is something to be said for someone that you feel safe with, that will protect you, that is a courteous person that has other people's best interests in mind. And now it's kind of turning into this every man for himself.
Yeah, and stability is a big part of the equation as well. Yeah, in my opinion. But
appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Thanks for being here. So be sure and check out the video portion of this if you're listening to the audio at protectorculture.com. We've got a YouTube channel. Scroll down and click. You can listen to these wherever you find your podcast. Please look into the Able Shepherd program. That's a community we're always talking about, building, strengthening our communities. And man, we're going nowhere but up. So right now, in this time of confusion and all that, I would encourage you, I just feel called to do this, is just encourage you to continue to pray about A, for our leaders, and B, for the leader in you. We need more people to stand and assign a purpose to their heart and then not ask permission to get going. So big or small, assign that purpose to your heart and do something good this week and don't ask permission. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. And like I always say, God bless each and every one of you. And until we see you again, take care of one another.